A quiet woman, dressed in a faded coat and scuffed shoes, entered the grand hall of the city's most famous auction house. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her small purse looked worn from years of use. She stepped inside, looking slightly out of place among the sea of glittering gowns, tailored suits, and sparkling jewelry. She approached the registration desk and said softly, "I'd like to bid, please." The young man behind the desk looked her up and down, struggling to hide his smirk. "Bidding is reserved for registered clients with proof of funds. Maybe you'd like to watch from the back," he said with a forced smile. She nodded politely and moved to the very last row, where no one paid attention to her. The auction began. Magnificent paintings, ancient artifacts, and rare jewels were paraded across the stage. The crowd shouted out their bids, millions thrown around like pocket change. The woman watched quietly. A few guests near her chuckled and whispered loud enough for her to hear. Must be lost. Maybe she thought this was a museum. At one point, a man snapped a photo of her on his phone, laughing as he shared it with his friends. The woman remained calm. She simply folded her hands on her lap and waited. When the most valuable item, a centuries-old masterpiece, was unveiled, the room buzzed with excitement. The auctioneer raised his gavel. Bidding starts at $10 million. Just as the first paddle lifted, a staff member rushed onto the stage and whispered into the auctioneer's ear. The auctioneer's face turned pale. He tapped the microphone and cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said shakily, "I regret to inform you that this piece and several others have been withdrawn from today's auction by the owner." Confusion spread across the room. Angry murmurs filled the air. Slowly, the woman stood up. Every head turned toward her. She walked calmly to the front, pulling a simple letter from her bag. She handed it to the auctioneer, who read it with shaking hands. Then she turned to the crowd and spoke clearly. "My name is Isla Monroe. I own the Monroe collection. This auction house was simply borrowing my family's art under a temporary agreement. After yesterday's treatment, I have decided to end that agreement." Gasps echoed across the hall. The people who had mocked her sat frozen, their faces pale with shock. The ones who had laughed now stared at the floor, ashamed. Without another word, Isla turned and walked out. Outside, a sleek black Rolls-Royce waited. The driver bowed and opened the door for her. As she climbed in, Isla glanced back once at the grand building, now in chaos. She smiled faintly. Some lessons, she thought, have to be learned the hard way. And then she was gone.